This is a 2023 drama series, Revenge Through Time Travel. The story begins with the female lead, Yi-ju, an orphan. As a child, Yi-ju desperately tried to appear obedient in hopes of being adopted and having parents. When the wife of the chairman came to select a child, Yi-ju saw that she was feeling hot and immediately poured her a glass of water. This act successfully pleased the chairman's wife, and Yi-ju was adopted. For an abandoned child, the only weapon is to act obedient. Yi-ju worked hard to please her adoptive parents. When she saw a delicious strawberry cake, she resisted the urge to appear greedy. She never asked for new clothes and always acted well-behaved and sensible. Her adoptive mother noticed all of this, but in reality, her adoptive mother despised her. She adopted Yi-ju purely for entertainment. As an adult, Yi-ju met someone she liked. She mustered the courage to confess, and he accepted her. She thought she had finally found happiness. However, after marriage, her mother-in-law only saw her as an ATM. Whenever her mother-in-law called, Yi-ju had to prepare a grand meal to entertain her friends. Pressed for time, Yi-ju asked her sister-in-law for help, but she dismissed her, saying to just make something simple. With no other choice, Yi-ju hurriedly cleaned the house and started preparing various dishes. In her rush, she accidentally cut her finger. Her mother-in-law showed no concern and instead scolded her for not ordering takeout. Yi-ju explained that guests deserved a carefully prepared meal, which only angered her mother-in-law more. Her mother-in-law accused Yi-ju of embarrassing her on purpose. Yi-ju handed her a credit card as an apology. Seeing that she got what she wanted, her mother-in-law pretended to be reluctant but accepted it. Yi-ju painted a family portrait as a gift for her adoptive mother. However, when she returned home, no one was there. She called, but no one answered, so she contacted the secretary. Only then did she learn that today was her sister's gallery opening. No one in the family had told her. Even worse, her husband was at the event, gently filming Yura with a warm smile. Yi-ju brought the family portrait to the venue. Instead of being happy, her adoptive mother mocked her for overestimating herself. Yi-ju had a talent for painting since childhood. Her adoptive mother exploited her innocence, making her replicate famous artworks. However, a buyer eventually noticed the deception. At an auction, the same buyer deliberately purchased a painting at the highest price and publicly exposed the fraud. Yi-ju's adoptive mother insisted the painting was genuine, claiming no one could replicate the artist's style. But the buyer pointed at Jong-hye and said, "Isn't your daughter the one who has been forging these paintings?" Her adoptive mother tried to deny it, but the buyer immediately called the police to investigate all the artworks she had sold. Realizing she was in serious trouble, her adoptive mother anxiously asked her secretary what to do. The secretary glanced at Yi-ju before whispering something to her. Then, her adoptive mother suddenly begged Yi-ju for help. She asked Yi-ju to take the blame, saying the paintings were all her work. Before Yi-ju could respond, the secretary told the buyer that Yi-ju had forged the paintings and split the profits. She even claimed that the last painting sold was also Yi-ju's work. Yi-ju was completely stunned. She couldn't understand why her own mother would do this to her. The secretary then presented various pieces of evidence. The forged paintings were all found in the gallery's studio, where Yi-ju often painted. Records also showed transfers from Yi-ju's account to a shell company. After hearing this, Yi-ju finally realized that her mother had been using her all along. The police immediately moved to arrest her. Her adoptive mother pretended to cry, saying, "It's my fault for not raising her properly. Please take me instead." But the most heartbreaking thing was that her husband, rather than helping her, ran to comfort Yura instead. The art gallery belonged to Yura, and Jae-ho didn't want to see her upset. Feeling distressed for her, he openly confessed his feelings. Yura, however, had always known that Jae-ho liked her, but she only wanted to marry a wealthy man. To her, someone from Jae-ho's modest background was beneath her. Their entire conversation was overheard by Yi-ju. When Yura noticed her, she awkwardly ran away, and Jae-ho instinctively wanted to chase after her. Yi-ju couldn't believe what she had just heard. She confronted Jae-ho, but he simply told her, "I was planning to tell you today." Yi-ju interrupted him, asking, "Weren't you going to talk to me about resigning today?" She pulled out his resignation letter, but Jae-ho told her to turn to the next page. Yi-ju was stunned. It was a divorce agreement. "Did you marry me just so you could stay close to Yura?" she asked. Jae-ho admitted, "I married you because I felt sorry for you." Yi-ju was completely shattered. At that moment, the police arrived. Heartbroken, Yi-ju ran away, driving while sobbing uncontrollably. Her adoptive mother called, desperately pleading with her. "Now is the time for you to repay me," she said. "I'll hire the best lawyer. If you return the money and show remorse, you won't even be sentenced." Yi-ju listened to her mother's begging, but, overwhelmed by pain and betrayal, crashed into another car. As she lost consciousness, a truck collided with her vehicle again. Yi-ju was rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment, but her injuries were too severe for surgery. The doctors decided to monitor her condition first. After they left, only her adoptive mother remained in the room. Taking advantage of Yiju's unconscious state, she quietly removed her oxygen tube, whispering, "In your next life, don't be so kind." She then recounted the past, admitting that she had always hated Yiju and had only adopted her for amusement. After finishing her confession, she ordered the secretary to reconnect the oxygen tube. A call from her adoptive father came through, and whatever she said caused Yiju to completely lose hope. She closed her eyes in despair. As the doctors rushed in to resuscitate her, Yiju silently prayed, "If I get another chance, I will take revenge on everyone." Ultimately, she did not survive, but in the next moment, she was startled awake by the sound of an alarm. She had been reborn, back to the day of her wedding dress fitting 1 year ago. She anxiously touched the wedding dress, and the sales assistant complimented her, just like before. Everything that followed played out exactly as it had in her past life. That's when Yiju finally realized this was real, not a dream. She recalled her adoptive mother's last words, "In your next life, don't be so kind." This time, Yiju decided to follow her advice, and her first act after rebirth was to break off her engagement. She took off the wedding dress and tossed the bouquet onto her fiancé's head. Jae-ho was completely stunned. He tried to stop Yiju, assuming she was just throwing a tantrum, but Yiju had no patience for him. She needed to inform everyone about the cancellation. Next, she told her adoptive mother about her decision. Her mother ignored her and instead instructed the housekeeper to buy a chicken for soup. Yiju, growing impatient, asked, "Did you not hear me? Or are you just pretending not to?" Her mother was taken aback. Was this really the same timid girl? Jae-ho soon arrived, begging her mother to delay the engagement. But Yiju, now out of her wedding dress, "How many times do I have to say it before you understand?" Her adoptive mother, irritated, scolded them for arguing in front of her. Jae-ho quickly pulled Yiju aside, only for her to shake off his hand in disgust. She exposed the truth. Jae-ho had only married her to be close to Yura. Caught off guard by her directness, Do-guk panicked. He admitted that his family had gone bankrupt and that marrying Yiju was the only way he could survive. He couldn't afford to let the engagement be broken. Truly despicable. No matter how much he begged, Yiju remained unmoved. Jae-ho was confused. "Didn't you always like me?" But Yiju suddenly recalled his final words to her in her previous life. Yiju coldly told Jae-ho, "That wasn't love. It was pity. You tried so hard to be liked, just like I once did. I saw myself in you, and that made me sympathize with you. But now, I won't do that anymore. I won't humble myself for anyone." With that, she walked away confidently. On her way back, Yiju overheard a conversation between her adoptive mother and Yura. It turned out Yura had always been in love with Do-guk and was desperate to marry him. After hearing this, Yiju made a bold decision. She would take Do-guk for herself. She immediately called her best friend to gather information about him. When her friend realized that Yiju had completely changed and was out for revenge, she provided detailed information about Do-guk's family background. Yiju found out that Yura and Do-guk had a date the next day. The following day, Yiju arrived there politely and unexpectedly discovered that Do-guk already knew who she was. Without hesitation, she got straight to the point. "How about we get married?" Do-guk was amused. "I heard you were a boring woman, but you're actually quite interesting." He then added, "If I'm getting married, of course I'll choose the better option." With that, he pulled out a hotel keycard, testing Yiju's reaction. At first, Yiju hesitated, but when she saw Yura approaching, she grabbed the keycard without a second thought. Do-guk immediately led Yiju away, leaving Yura standing there in shock. However, as Yiju entered the hotel, she realized she had misunderstood. This was just Do-guk's office. Meanwhile, Yura, feeling anxious, called Jae-ho, asking him to take Yiju away. But Yiju ignored everyone. Desperate, Yura sent her a message. "I'll wait for you here until you come out." Yiju read it and decided to spend the night at the hotel. As Do-guk slowly closed the distance between them, they engaged in a tense exchange, testing each other's motives. Finally, Yiju made her offer. "Let's have a contract marriage. I'll help your company go public." To prove her worth, she used her knowledge from her past life to reveal crucial business information. Intrigued, Do-guk became even more curious about her. They shared a drink. Meanwhile, Yura, unable to wait any longer, lashed out at Jae-ho before leaving in frustration. As Yiju drank more, she started confessing her pain. "I've already died once," she murmured. Do-guk didn't know what she had been through, but he felt an overwhelming urge to protect this wounded girl. From his reaction, it seemed like he had known Yiju for a long time. The next morning, Yiju woke up in a panic and hurriedly fled. When she got home, her adoptive mother slapped her across the face. Her adoptive father then demanded that she marry Jae-ho as originally planned. Yiju refused, explaining that Jae-ho didn't love her. Yura immediately played the victim, claiming that Yiju was only making up lies because she was upset that her brother-in-law didn't help her pick a wedding dress. Yiju was speechless. Yura was truly a master of manipulation. Without hesitation, Yiju dropped a bombshell. "I already slept with Doguk." That statement sent Yura into a complete breakdown. Her adoptive mother, furious, hugged Yura protectively and ordered the secretary to lock Yiju in her room until she reflected on her actions. Yiju was used to this kind of punishment. Every time Yura played the victim, she was the one who suffered. But she wasn't going to sit back and endure it anymore. She immediately checked the news on her phone, expecting to find reports about her and Doguk's date, but there was nothing. It turned out that the Taizi group had suppressed the news. Since her original plan had failed, she needed to think of a new strategy. Just as she was discussing her next move with her friend over the phone, the secretary barged in, confiscating her phone and bringing her some medicine. Yiju pretended to take it, but secretly spit it out after the secretary left. Meanwhile, Doguk was being interrogated by his entire family. His mother, after seeing the news, was shocked. "You're really going to marry that adopted daughter?" Doguk looked directly at his family and declared, "I've chosen Yiju." Meanwhile, Yiju, still locked up, was desperately trying to find a way out. She spotted a passing student and convinced them to lend her a phone in exchange for 10,000 won. As soon as she got the phone, she called Doguk. "I've been locked up. If you come help me now, I'll officially propose a business deal and give you insider stock information." Daoguo, still with his family, smirked and decided to tease her. "Say it," he demanded. "Say, 'Please save me, my prince.'" Yiju was stunned. She clenched her teeth, but realizing she had no choice, reluctantly gave in. Hearing Yiju's plea, her adoptive mother sneered. "You think spending a single night together means anything to Doguk? Even your own mother abandoned you. What man would ever truly love you?" she mocked. "You should be grateful that Jeho is even willing to marry you, yet you dare to break off the engagement." As she continued her tirade, Doguk finally arrived. Right in front of Yiju's entire family, he declared, "I'm here to ask for Yiju's hand in marriage." Yiju's adoptive mother was furious. "You went on a matchmaking date with Yura, yet now you want to marry Yiju? Isn't that disrespectful?" Doguk remained cold and direct. "I know that you asked the Taizi group matriarch to arrange the matchmaking, but I already rejected Yura in person, and yet she kept contacting me." Yura's face burned with humiliation. Her resentment toward Yiju deepened. Doguk smirked and shut her down. With that, he took Yiju's hand and led her away. Before leaving, Yiju demanded her phone back. Seeing this, Doguk didn't hesitate to take another jab at her adoptive mother. "From now on, I will protect Yiju," he declared. Once they were outside, Yiju tried to discuss her business proposal again, but Doguk simply said, "Let's eat first." He took her to a restaurant, but Yiju found herself unable to eat. Doguk's expression darkened. Without hesitation, he took her away from the restaurant and personally prepared food for her, carefully microwaving her favorite dishes. As Yiju tried again to bring up the proposal, Doguk once again brushed it aside. Overwhelmed by his unexpected kindness, Yiju suddenly broke down in tears. For the first time, she felt what it was like to be cared for. Seeing her cry, Doguk's heart ached. He wanted to understand what she had been through in that house. Through her tears, Yiju finally shared everything, her pain, her reasons for wanting to marry him. "I want revenge on Yura and Zhonghye, her adopted mother," she admitted. Doguk smiled. He stepped aside, picked a small flower and placed it in her hand. "Marry me," he said. Yiju was completely caught off guard. She hadn't prepared for this at all. After a moment of hesitation, Yiju stepped forward and kissed him. The next day, Doguk deliberately leaked news of their relationship. When Yura saw it, she angrily confronted her father. "You should never have allowed Yiju to marry Doguk," her father sighed. "When a man is truly captivated by a woman, no one can stop him." But her mother wasn't convinced. "Doguk's parents haven't approved this marriage yet. This is completely his decision. If we offend the Taizi group because of this, we'll gain nothing from it." Hearing this, Yura's father immediately called Yiju in for questioning. Her mother seized the opportunity to set an impossible condition. "You must have the Taizi group chairman personally propose on behalf of Doguk, and his family must approve this marriage." She was certain Yiju would fail, but Yiju, without hesitation, confidently accepted the challenge. That very night, she went straight to Doguk to discuss the matter. Doguk, already expecting her, sent his secretary to pick her up while he stayed home, cooking. When Yiju arrived, he greeted her with a warm cup of white coffee and a meal he had personally prepared. Yiju was confused. "Why did you leak the news about us?" Doguk smirked. "Because I wanted the benefits you promised, and I was afraid you'd back out." Then, he pulled out a contract, a prenuptial agreement. "Sign it." Yiju glanced at the document and then at the date on her wristwatch. "Let's set the marriage duration for 1 year." Doguk agreed. They both signed the contract. Doguk smiled as he led Yiju into a newly prepared residence. Since we're business partners, we need a base of operations. This place is specially prepared for you, he said. The kitchen was stocked with Yiju's favorite foods. The living room had various entertainment options, and the bedroom was decorated like a princess's chamber. It was clear. Doguk truly adored her. Yiju stared at the time on her wristwatch. If I were to return to that moment again, would I die, or would I be reborn? The thought made her clutch the key Doguk had given her. She resolved to change her fate, starting with Zhonghye's counterfeit paintings. She went straight to Zhonghye's gallery and demanded her stored artwork back. But her battle wasn't just with Zhonghye. She needed to win over Doguk's grandfather for marriage approval. Determined, Yiju waited outside the hospital room, pleading for an audience. No matter how hard she knocked, the old man remained indifferent. Zhonghye, hearing this news, smirked. Perfect, she said. Desperate for a solution, Yiju turned to her best friend. You need to start at the top, her friend advised. Doguk's mother, Yeonhwa, is the real decision-maker. Every week, Yeonhwa attended a pottery class, a social gathering for high-class women. It was a battlefield of gossip and influence. If you want a real challenge, announce yourself there, her friend suggested. Sure enough, when Yiju arrived, the wealthy women were already mocking Doguk. I heard his latest obsession is some orphan girl with no proper background. Hearing this, Yeonhwa's fury erupted. She grabbed a spoon and nearly struck the speaker, causing a chaotic scene. Seizing the moment, Yiju stepped inside. The room fell silent as she confidently introduced herself. After the gathering, Yeonhwa agreed to a private meeting. I'm here for your approval, Yiju said honestly. As she left, she noticed Yeonhwa waiting outside. Come, have tea with me, she invited. Following her into the restaurant, Yiju froze. Yura was there too. The tension in the air was suffocating. Meanwhile, back at the Han family home, Doguk was having dinner with his family, completely unaware of the storm Yiju was walking into. To gain her grandmother's approval for the marriage, Yiju decided to move back home. This made Seong-yoon extremely uneasy. Doguk and Seong-yoon were half-brothers, sharing the same father but different mothers. Doguk's mother was actually Seong-yoon's stepmother. To avoid favoritism, she had allowed Seong-yoon to take over as the head of Taiji Group, while Doguk chose to study abroad. However, Doguk was remarkably talented in business. He not only founded his own company independent of the family, but also led it to become the industry leader in sales. In contrast, Seong-yoon pursued wealth through unethical means, including forced evictions. Their grandmother was deeply disappointed in Seong-yoon and favored Doguk instead. During a family dinner, Seong-yoon mocked Doguk. You can't change your birthright, he sneered. I heard that woman is just an adopted daughter. She must have an interesting personality, never having experienced parental love. Doguk remained silent in front of his grandmother. However, later that night, as he was heading back to his room, he sternly warned Seong-yoon not to test his limits. At the same time, Yura advised Yiju to control her emotions and not show open hostility toward her. But Yiju despised putting on a fake act. When they returned to the dining room, Yura took the initiative to serve tea for Yiju, but Yiju dismissed her with indifference. Yeonhwa, Doguk's mother, noticed their tension and asked, Do you two not get along? Then she made a shocking suggestion. She wanted Yiju to give up Doguk for her younger sister. Yiju refused outright. I will never give up anything to Yura. Besides, this isn't something that can be settled by someone giving up. Doguk's wishes matter too. From now on, I refuse to meet you together with Yura. Yeonhwa was stunned by Yiju's defiance. Do you always talk back like this? Were you never taught manners? Just then, Doguk appeared and coldly responded, The only rude person here is you, mother. He took Yiju's hand, ready to leave. Yiju, feeling slightly guilty for coming uninvited, apologized. But I believe you'll understand how I feel. After all, you also married against your parents' wishes. Hearing this, Yeonhwa launched into a long speech about how exceptional and beautiful she was back in the day, implying that Yiju wasn't worthy of Doguk. Then she suddenly asked, Do you love Doguk? The question caught Yiju off guard. After a moment of thought, she responded truthfully. I broke off my previous engagement because I was being used. But Doguk isn't someone who would betray the woman he loves. Besides, he has a straightforward mother who speaks her mind. This unexpectedly pleased Yeonhwa. After they left, she had already made up her mind. Yura attempted to bribe her with gifts, but she firmly rejected them. Meanwhile, Doguk told Yiju, If you want to get back at Yura, you have to fall in love with me. He then listed several reasons why this was the best course of action. Yiju, surprisingly, was convinced. Doguk then suggested, Why don't we try confessing our feelings? Yiju hesitated and challenged, You first. Without hesitation, Doguk stood up, walked up to Yiju and said, If I say it, will you be able to handle it? Yiju was momentarily speechless. Seeing her reaction, Doguk asked, Did your heart just skip a beat? Yeju quickly brushed it off, thinking he was just acting. But little did she know, Doguk was being completely sincere. That night, Doguk decided to stay over. Yeju, unable to sleep, walked out to find him drinking heavily. He had already fallen asleep on the couch, murmuring in his dreams. Gently, Yeju wiped the sweat from his face. The next morning, Yeonhwa suddenly arrived and was shocked to see them together. When Yeju moved to wake Doguk, she stopped her. He usually has trouble sleeping. Let him rest. Before leaving, she told Yeju, I approve of your marriage. Overjoyed, Yeju rushed to tell her adoptive father the news. Doguk's family would officially come to propose that weekend. Her adoptive father was more than pleased, knowing that an alliance with Taiji Group would greatly benefit his business. Her adoptive mother, however, attempted to object. But at that moment, Yeju received a call from Doguk's grandfather. In a commanding tone, he instructed them to properly prepare for the wedding. It turned out that the day Yeju had begged outside his hospital room, after the secretary left, Yeju recalled a memory from her past life. Right before she died, Doguk's grandfather had called to ask for her forgiveness. However, she had never understood what he sought forgiveness for. Facing the door, she called out, I've already forgiven you, Grandpa. The moment she spoke those words, the door opened. The grandfather, emotional, asked Yeju to repeat what she had just said. When she did, he became visibly moved. By the weekend, the families gathered for the formal marriage proposal at a remote location. During the meeting, Jung-hye deliberately mocked the setting, calling it inappropriate for such an important occasion. Yeonhwa, unimpressed by Jung-hye's pretentious airs, began subtly clashing with her. Jung-hye took the opportunity to belittle Yeju, claiming her daughter had always lacked the ability to manage household affairs and wouldn't be fit for the role of a wealthy family's daughter-in-law. Yeju, feeling nervous, fidgeted with her hands, a sight that pained Doguk deeply. He immediately stood up, boldly declaring, You have nothing to worry about. Yeju is more than capable. Jung-hye, unfazed, turned to Yeju and asked if she agreed with Doguk's statement. Thanks for watching. Please like and a drop heart. For continuation,